Another comment here from our friend Gixxer Squid, loyal viewer. Can we trust Lincoln Riley's comments about not leaving USC? He said the same thing when he was at Oklahoma after the Bedlam game. Interesting little point. And, Oklahoma fans would be quick to say, oh, that Viper Lincoln Riley, don't trust him, like he's going to divorce you. I actually do kind of think that saying, this is where I want to be, I actually believe him. I actually do believe Lincoln Riley saying, you know what, this is where I need to plant my flag. This is where I need to make a run at a national title to maximize my career. Now, that doesn't guarantee, just because I agree with Lincoln Riley doesn't mean that that's the actual reality of the situation. And we've seen and heard coaches say, like, I'm staying, and then they bolt, so it wouldn't be anything new if he did leave. But I actually think that, when we think about coaches talking about job speculation, there are certain kinds of answers that do leave you scratching your head or rubbing your chin. What's really going on here? Saying, I'm where I need to be, that's not that kind of answer. That actually strikes me as a pretty clear, pretty affirmative statement of, yeah, I'm here. So that addresses that particular question from Gixxer Squid. Ethan, you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, can I jump in on that? I think I actually want to focus on his other half of the answer, which is, he said, you guys know what I sacrificed to come here. That shows a little bit of, self-reflection and self-awareness and a little bit of mental growth, because what he's basically saying in no uncertain terms is, hey, I was handed an incredible situation at Oklahoma, which is like a very humble thing to say. Like, he's he's not going into a ton of detail about it, but like, if you're reading between the lines and what Lincoln Riley came from, like, he's admitting to you that like he was kind of, grandfathered into this incredible situation. And, he doesn't deserve all the credit for how good Oklahoma was. Like, he deserves some of the credit because, he still coached those teams and did a great job. But like, he was put in a very good situation. Whereas when he came to USC, like, USC was a 4-8 football team in 2021. They were not good. So I think, that kind of self-reflection of like, man, like, I've invested so much of myself into this when I could have just stayed in a nice, cushy situation and gotten the number 4 seed in the college football playoff every year just to get blown out by Alabama or Georgia. Like I think that's really telling, because that's what I've been saying as a reason why he shouldn't leave. He shouldn't want to leave. Whether or not the school wants to move on from him is a different story. But like, why he personally shouldn't want to leave and should want to continue this is because like he doesn't want to have to start over again. Like, we saw how him having to start over has led to a lot of these struggles and him having to learn. And but he's invested a lot, and he's had to go through a couple defensive coordinators, and he's built this 2026 recruiting class. So I just don't think that I think that he's aware of that, and I don't think that he wants to do that again. And to his family too. Like, he has a young family, and they're still in their formative years. They're still going to school. Like, having to move your kids around all that much is really tough. It's not like, I'll use a baseball example. It's not like Tony Vitello coming to San Francisco because he doesn't have a family. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a wife. So he doesn't, that's not factoring into his equation. He's factoring in like himself and his own personal career and, maybe some extended family in there, but he's also just, his own adult who can make his adult decisions. So I just think, all of those reasons show to me that, he's not being distracted by the flashiness of LSU or Florida. Like, he knows the real implications of that. And he knows that, he's going to get put through the ringer again if the program he goes to isn't immediately competitive.
Yeah, Crash, I'm going to let you take a crack at this one. Just want to mention that Lincoln Riley's agent, Trace Armstrong, played at Florida, and Trace Armstrong floated an LSU rumor 4 years ago before Lincoln Riley actually did come to USC. So like, for the skepticism among Oklahoma fans in particular, but also like the Josh Pates, and could let Ethan talk about that one. The skepticism the skepticism about Lincoln Riley being honest is not without basis, but there obviously there's a way to handle that. But Crash, and then I'll let Ethan talk about Josh Pate in a bit. But Crash, your view of this Lincoln Riley situation and his remarks after the Northwestern game.
Well, I think it's like what Ethan said. It's like, yeah, he's going to, I mean, obviously, we don't know what could happen. Like, all we know is it's going to be a crazy coaching carousel season. That's, I think, the one thing we can all say with 100% certainty. But with Lincoln Riley, I think it's like you said, he's got family, all this stuff that's like makes it trickier to move. But I think also it's like, does he want to get put through the ringer? I mean, but also I find it interesting too is like, yeah, his agent is Chase Armstrong, who also represents Brian Kelly, who's just fired from LSU. And what I was going to say about that is just look at some of the coaches who've been fired in these recent weeks. Especially, I really want to zero in on James Franklin, Penn State, and now Brian Kelly. Like, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to tell schools how to do their business, when they should fire their coaches. But if you actually stop and just look at how they did, Franklin did a terrific job over his 12 years and just, started to fall apart. Honestly, I'm wondering, could he have maybe turned it around? Guess we'll never find out. And as for Brian Kelly, this year was starting to come off the rails and all that, but he still had a winning record overall. He went 34-14 over his 3.5 seasons. That's actually if you actually stop and think about it, it's not bad. So for Lincoln Riley, I think he's got a worse record than Kelly had when he got canned at LSU. He's thinking, do I really also you got to factor in, do I want to go to a place where I'm going to get fired if, for this record here gets me fired? And I mean, keep in mind, I'm not trying, obviously USC's got a high standard. I get that he's trying to work to that. And I think he seems like he's really starting to build on it, got some real momentum here. But if he blows it all up now here and then goes to LSU and he does about the same thing, they're probably going to fire him too, especially just with all the politics and stuff, because it seems like they're probably not paying their next coach as much too. So that's probably also a factor as well, at least based on what Governor Jeff Landry's been saying. But that's going to be an interesting situation. I've been reading up a bit on how the governor at LSU, the governor of Louisiana, has been heavily involved in LSU, but it'll just be but with Lincoln Riley, it just seems like you could go another place and you get fired for doing just as well as you've done at USC. So it doesn't really seem like you'd leave when it seems like at USC, they're not happy with the results, but they're putting resources towards you to help you reach that goal, help you reach that championship. So I think that's why I don't see him leaving.
The governor of LSU, I need to work that into a column because that's actually the truth. I mean, not officially, but essentially. So I have to use that. You've given me some column material, Crash. In terms of telling administrators how to do their jobs, 9 times out of 10, no. But here's one place where I think the common person just off the street can actually be right. And that is, why are you doing these large buyouts? That is just throwing away money and lighting it on fire. Large sums of money, paying a guy $50 million to not coach. It just crushes me. Deals should be incentive based. That just seems like the most obvious thing in the world, that we will give you Fort Knox when you win conference championships, when you get to the college football playoff. It just seems like the most obvious thing. And if a coach and Jimmy Sexton, super agent, says no, okay, fine. Go find your client another job with that huge price tag. We're going to actually manage our money here at our university. So it just blows me away that we're still seeing schools light all this money on fire and not structuring details that reward incentives and actual achievements. Alabama gave Nick Saban an absolute boatload of money when he had already done something. This was not front loaded. This was not premature. It happened after he had proven his value to the university. You do things when someone has proven that he can actually deliver for you. It just kills me that we're not. All right, so to wrap this thing up, Ethan wrote a piece at Trojans Wire over the course of the week on Josh Pate, and Josh Pate just very in a very casual kind of way, and that was part of Ethan's point here, that there's a way to talk about rumors in the coaching carousel, and there's a way to not do it. And so, Ethan, you can walk our viewers through your column here at the Voice of College Football. Just a final word on Josh Pate.
Yeah, I think what Josh Pate did is, I also actually, before I get into it, I want to preface this by like, generally, I am a fan of Josh Pate's content. Like, I really harbor nothing personal towards him. Like, this was a unique criticism from me on this one clip. Like, I think the like 99% of his content that I've seen, I've really enjoyed. And I'm like a fan of the content he produces. So just keep that in mind. But I think what Josh Pate did here is like an issue that I see popping up a lot in like journalism spaces today, which is where like people just hide behind like really vague rumors. Like one of my least favorite things to see on Twitter is like, I'm hearing that X team is going to make a big move today. And it's like, okay, like why, like, and if the team does anything, you're going to point to it and say, "See, I was right." And like, it's just not my favorite thing. So I understand the temptation behind being vague. Like I'm not I'm no stranger to this. Like I work for this channel. I write for Trojans Wire. Like I understand that like SEO and getting clicks is like king in today's journalism world because we've moved onto the internet and we don't print, hardly anybody prints anymore, and so we have to do our journalism and make our content in digital spaces. Like I understand like that whole part of it, and like, but I think the issue here is Josh Pate really, the way he went about it was like it was kind of like very smug, and it was like, I know something you don't know. And then he like kind of mimed like he was pulling the pin in a grenade, and like like it was this massive revelation that he was going to drop. Then he just said like, let's keep an eye on Lincoln Riley and USC, with no like hints of what he knew. Like, was he hearing that other schools were interested in Lincoln Riley? Was he hearing that Lincoln Riley was interested in leaving? Was he hearing that Lincoln Riley's agent was reaching out to other schools? Was he hearing that USC wasn't happy with Lincoln Riley? Like, no inclination as to where this was coming from whatsoever. No citing his sources, nothing. And I just think it was really irresponsible. Like, and again, I get the temptation. Like, it's for clicks, and also like he could have had real journalistic reasons. Like, he could have a real source on this, and that source just wants to be protected and doesn't want to have his name out there. But like, if you can't, I think you have a responsibility to your audience of some transparency. Like, I don't think like I ever pretend like I know something I don't know, or if I do know something, I always cite where it's coming from. And I think that that's true of Crash. It's true of Matt. Like none of us are going to, we all share our speculation on what could be happening, but when we do, we're always clear that it's speculation. And when we know something, we're clear that we know something. And this was just like a lot of blurred lines between like, does Josh Pate know something? If he knows something, what is it? And if he doesn't know something, he's making it seem like he knows something when he could have just, put all of this to bed by saying like, well, I think based on Lincoln Riley's history, or I think based on what these schools are looking for, or, I think based on what these schools are prepared to offer Lincoln Riley, this could be a potential storyline to watch. That's not really what he did. Again, like he was just so like, look, I know something you don't know. And like another point on this that I didn't even write about in my article that I saw on Twitter, I think it was last night, was someone pointed out that like it's possible that Josh Pate wasn't even talking about Lincoln Riley leaving USC at all. It's possible that he was like talking about USC adding a big name offensive coordinator to their staff. And the thing about being vague is if that's the thing that happens, he can point back to this and say, see, look, I was the first on this news. I was right. Like, if there's any big offseason news related to Lincoln Riley and USC at all. And so it just creates this sense of like false credibility, false, like, I don't know, like false insider knowledge. Like, I think if you are going to put a piece of information out there, like you need to hold yourself accountable for your own information. Like I think it's kind of a lost art because I think we're all so nervous about upholding the relationships so that we have. And I think, also, like I said, like we're in an era where like hot take content is kind of king and gets clicks. And even though the fans don't like it, they'll still click on it because they're mad at it. So like we're in that kind of era. And so I understand where this is coming from, but I just like if I think Josh Pate needed to decide whether he was so intent on getting this rumor. Like, it's not even a report. Like, it's not like he was reporting that Lincoln Riley's leaving USC. Like, I think he needed to decide if he was going to put this rumor out there and was willing to back it up with real evidence, or if he was going to just keep it to himself, because it's just irresponsible. Like there's so many like real life consequences that this clip could have. Like it could, harm trust between Lincoln Riley and his players. Like it could harm trust between Lincoln Riley and the university. Like, because again, it just puts everyone in the fan base as well. Like it puts everyone in this space of like, what does Josh Pate know? And like, it could, especially given Lincoln Riley's history, like create some suspicion towards him. So I just don't think it was the responsible thing to do. And I would like to see Josh Pate do better. And again, like I said, I'm generally a fan of him and his content. I think he's a really smart guy who knows a lot about college football. But before he goes and like drops the figurative grenade like he did in the clip with the Bussin' with the Boys guys, like just maybe consider, not putting content out there for a self-serving reason, and instead thinking about the consequences that this could have for other people. And like I said, weighing that decision, like if you really want to get it out there, back it up and, burn bridges if you have to. But, if you want to have this big responsibility to your audience and your responsibility to USC fans and college football fans with like, this is something that you should keep an eye on and be mentally prepared for, then back it up with whatever your sources are. But if you're not prepared to back it up, like keep it to yourself and, be willing to, not be able to jump in and be like, look, I knew this when something happens. So that's just kind of my thoughts on that. Sorry, that was really long-winded, but a lot of different angles to pull from. So
absolutely, it was a nuanced topic, and we wanted to give you the floor on that because that was one of your bigger pieces of Trojans Wire from the past